Good afternoon, everybody. This is Kylito Newt here with a special live stream, something that I've been really wanting to do for the past 2 years. I just never could get around to it. This is a video about my opinions on every active NASCAR driver in the Cup Series. Present, and I'll also include some drivers that are no longer racing in the Cup Series that had an impact on me as a race fan. So, without further ado, let's get to it. I have a list here from NASCAR.com. I was going to go down through this list by number, unless I can just find a better list here. Maybe I'll go to okay. I'll go. I went to Jayski, so they're in numerical order here. Okay, so rules are I'm going to go down this list, read off the drivers that are racing. I'm going to start with the drivers that are currently in NASCAR today. And I am not going, I'm going to gloss over some of the drivers that are mostly irrelevant, kind of like guys kind of like Quin Houff or anybody who drives for the Rick Ware cars, or people that I just really don't have much of an opinion on anyway. So I'm not even gonna go there. Okay, so I guess the first driver we have is Kurt Busch. Kurt has been interesting since I've become a NASCAR fan. I didn't really like Kurt very much in my earlier years. In fact, I didn't really start pulling for Kurt until 2013, whenever he was with Furniture Row. Whenever he was with Penske, I couldn't stand him, to be honest. I couldn't stand Kurt whenever he was with Penske. Now I can kind of look back on the races he won while he was with Penske, because I do like Kurt Busch now. He's actually one of my favorite drivers now. Kurt's done a lot of growing over the years, and I can kind of go back and watch races that he won and not get angry and stuff like that anymore, because Kurt Busch is he really is a great driver. He's underrated. He's a NASCAR champion. Got a lot of respect for Kurt and what he's been able to do with that number one car since he got into it. Really loved it whenever he drove the 41 car. 41 is my favorite number, so it was really great to see him win races in that car. But right now, Kurt, where he stands, I really like how he supports the troops, the United States troops, and all the stuff that he does. I mean, he's not the only one that does stuff like that, but he's probably the most notable driver who does things for the troops, because he's public about it and everything, and I really like that. I thought the crap he dealt with Patricia Driscoll and all that crap, I thought that was stupid. I don't. If that stuff would have happened like earlier in his career, I would have had maybe some doubts. But Kurt was at that point. Kurt's was starting to turn things around and everything. So I knew there had to be something more there. Kurt Busch definitely. I'm glad everything turned out okay for him while all that crap was going on. But that race with Kyle and Kurt at Kentucky, that was a good finish. I was really happy to see that. I I would have been fine with Kyle Busch winning it. Would have been great with Eric Jones winning it because those two were in the mix at the end as well. But I was really happy to see Kurt Busch win, and that was first win for Chevrolet at Kentucky. So right now, Kurt Busch stands really good with me, and very. I get excited if he's in position to win a race. Next driver is Brad Keselowski in the number 2. I've always liked Brad. I never really had much of a point in my life. Maybe like early in the junior motorsports days where he kept getting in incidents with other drivers, but he stands his ground and he knows what he's fighting for. And I think I really started to rally behind him whenever he went to Penske because I knew that he had a really good, like I knew before that 2010 Nationwide Series season started, I knew he had a really good shot at winning the championship that year. And I had no idea that he was going to do as good as he did, but I knew he had a really good shot. I thought Carl was just going to make it tough for him, though. But other than those two incidents, one in that Cup race at Atlanta, and then that race at Gateway, Carl really, him and Carl didn't really clash that much. I was big time on his side whenever all that stuff was going on, because the general consensus at the time was that those incidents, or that first incident at Atlanta, was because of what happened the previous year when Brad won that race at Talladega. But I don't think that really had much to do with it. I heard that no, I can't really remember that far back, but I think they had a few little incidents in the Xfinity races before all that happened. But I don't want to get back into all that. I couldn't stand Carl Edwards back then. Never really was a big fan of him, but I was behind Brad 100%, and I do acknowledge that he had a tendency to rub people the wrong way, which is fair. I mean, every driver has had that incident where they give and dish it out and take other people's crap. So it's all well and good. I mean, yeah, I bet a lot of people watching this, seeing my little icon on my profile, has Kyle Busch on it. Obviously, I'm a Kyle Busch fan. I'll get to him in a little bit. I know there's been a rivalry between Busch and Keselowski and their fans and everything like that, but I can respect Brad's talent. Brad's a good driver. He's a champion. He got 2 championships for Dodge. I was a huge Dodge fan whenever they were in NASCAR, so I was you can imagine I was pretty happy to see that. So yeah, that was good. And then I still am a Brad Keselowski fan, even as a Ford driver. And Brad's he's a pretty easy guy for me to pull for. I don't know about anybody else, but I think Brad is a pretty stand-up guy. He's really humble in his interviews most of the time. So yeah, I can get behind Brad. I can really get behind Brad Keselowski. Now, this one's really going to surprise a lot of people because I know a lot of Kyle Busch fans really can't stand this guy Austin Dillon, but I don't know. I can't really tell you why I like Austin so much. Maybe I was one of those guys that thought it was. I was ready to see the number 3 come back. I guess that's part of it. I like Austin Dillon as he's okay. I mean, he's just okay in my opinion. Like I really wanted to see him succeed, and I think he still can. I don't know. A lot of some of the criticisms that he gets, they're fair. Like he's only there because of Richard Childress and Mike Dillon, being related to them and everything, which is a fair assessment. But I mean, he wouldn't be where he's at. He wouldn't be racing in the Cup Series if he didn't have some semblance of talent. Okay. You can try to downplay his Cup Series wins all you want to, but he's won 2 races. Now I know I think he's been racing now for 6 years now in the Cup Series. So 2 wins, whenever you compare it to 6 years, really isn't all that impressive, but he's been in the playoffs multiple times. He hasn't gotten very far, but he's been in the playoffs. So making the playoffs in itself is a challenge on its own. He even made the playoffs whenever he didn't win races. Like I think the year before, I think he got it. I think he made it in 2016. I don't know. I can't remember. Can't remember that far back, but he definitely raced his way into the playoffs. I think last year as well, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and fact check that. But anyway, what I'm saying is Austin Dillon. I still think he's a good driver. I will say this, he will never be a championship driver, at least as far as I can tell right now. But I believe he can still. I believe he's maybe got a few more wins in his future. I don't know when or where or how, but I think Austin Dillon will probably close out his career with maybe, I don't know, 8, 9 wins. He's kind of a Jamie McMurray level driver. No disrespect to Austin Dillon or Jamie McMurray by saying that, but they pulling out that. I think that's when it's all said and done. I think that's how many wins he's going to have. Moving on to the next driver. I don't really have to look at this list. I know who it is. It's Kevin Harvick. This one's going to be fun to talk about. I have gone on the record many times on social media, pretty much anything that I've ever posted on, about how much I can't stand Kevin Harvick. Like, I really can't stand Kevin Harvick. But I feel like I've matured enough as a race fan and as a person, to, like, I'm going to say some nice things about Kevin Harvick here. Even though I can't stand seeing him win, I can't stand him. I'm going to start saying some nice things here in a minute. I'm going to talk about why I can't stand Kevin Harvick. Most of it, I just couldn't. I didn't like him as a driver. Like from the minute I first started watching racing, I just didn't care for him, and that's pretty much where it was for the first few years I was watching. And my disdain for him didn't really start until excuse me, until after an incident in 2011. I think you might know what I'm talking about. You might already be able to tell what I'm talking about like when I say 2011, the Darlington race. Well, actually, no, it was before that. Even before that, Homestead 2010. Now, my memory of this event isn't like super great, but I do remember that Kyle Busch and Harvick were racing for position. And Harvick just flat out dumps him. I'm sure they probably were racing each other a little crazy, which yeah, whatever. They're both polarizing figures in the sport. They're both aggressive drivers, so that's to be expected. And it's the last race of the season, so I get that. But Harvick just flat out dumps him, and then and sets Kyle Busch's car on fire. And then after that, he Kyle Busch gets out of the car and calls him Two-Face, which a lot of people are confused as to why Kyle Busch had problems with Harvick in 2011. That incident right there, and then Harvick, he was involved in incidents with all three of the Gibbs cars in 2010. So that's people wonder why Harvick was at odds with JGR at that point. It's right there. Harvick was literally causing trouble for every JGR driver in 2010. Got an incident with Hamlin, several incidents with Logano, and then flat out wrecks Kyle Busch in the Homestead race. And then in that Darlington race in 2011, they're not going to win, but I think Kyle Busch salvaged a 10th or 11th place finish, and he dumped Harvick. Of course, it was while he was going 3 wide with Bowyer. So Harvick, he was right. I mean, I don't want to say he was rightfully mad because he had it coming. But, I mean, he was understandably mad. He got taken out. Or as We're Gonna Lose would say, tookened out. He got tookened out. But Harvick, he goes up and tries to punch Kyle Busch after the race in his car. He's still got his helmet on because he's a double crossing two-faced son of a gun. But he and I love that Jimmy Spencer on Race Hub later on he called him out on that. I never really thought about people fighting with their helmets on before that incident, but that kind of gave me a perspective. Anyway, enough of that. But yeah, so there were several incidents, and then in an interview later on that year, Harvick he was really taking advantage of Kyle Busch. In this interview, it was on race day or something like that, and he started talking crap about Kyle Busch and he's taking advantage about how a lot of people can't stand Kyle Busch. And he had the crowd erupting in cheers whenever he was talking crap about him, and that really ticked me off. I was watching that, and I was like, "You stupid prick!" But anyway, Harvick's had ever since 2011. Harvick's been at the top of my dislike list, and it's probably not ever going to change. But I will say this: he over the years he has like a lot. There's a lot of drivers that I'm going to say this about, but over the years they've changed a lot. Like Harvick has changed a lot. He's a lot more respectable now, but unfortunately he's also winning races a lot too. And I from that point on, I kind of picked him as my least favorite driver, and it's kind of stuck. And I don't think it's never going to end. But he's about the time when Kyle Busch starts peaking, like a year before Kyle Busch started really taking off and becoming the driver he is today. Like a year before that, Harvick really took off because he moved to Stewart-Haas, which was a move that really a lot of people shouldn't be surprised that he made, considering his relationship with Childress was faltering. But anyway, Kevin Harvick is, over the last few years, he's really started to. I really started to have a little bit more respect for him now because of some of the stuff that he's done. Like, good night. I lost my train of thought, but like, okay, one thing I will say, like he after he won that race at Michigan, Michigan, he got Keelan Harvick to ride in his car with him. That was a nice sight to see. And it even inspired Kyle Busch to have Brexton ride in his car with him whenever he won the championship this past year. So, NASCAR was cool with it. So I'm glad that they were able to get that done. And that's got to be a really, it's going to be a really good tender moment for them to look back on in the future years. But Kevin Harvick, he's definitely not as big of a prick as he used to be, not by a long shot. So, in fact, there was a couple races that he won last year where I'm like, you know what? I don't even care right now. Like, I don't even care. Like, he can win this race because I think that first race that he won last year, that he won, I was actually okay with it because his 2019, and it's the same this year too, Mobil 1 scheme is fire. I love that thing. But I think I've spent enough time on Kevin Harvick. I'm going to move on to right now. Ryan Newman's listed as the initial driver of this car, but Ross Chastain's driving it. Let me say a quick word about Ross Chastain. I really think Ross Chastain I think that he'll be a solid driver whenever he finally gets a solid opportunity in Cup. See how well he does this year in Xfinity. I don't see him jumping ship to any different series this year. So, but I don't know where he's going to end up this silly season if racing gets to go back. I mean, once racing gets to go back to normal and everything after all this pandemic is over with. Hopefully we get to see some races, how Ross Chastain does in spending too much time stuttering about Ross Chastain. But my point is, I really hope that I hope he's as good a driver as the hype that's surrounding him. I mean, it's kind of died down a little bit because potatoes, but I mean, in recent like this past season, he didn't win the Truck Series championship, but I don't think anybody was happy with that. But Ross Chastain is, I think he'll be a solid driver. I don't think he's going to be like, I don't think he's going to be like the legend that the hype is building him up to be, but I think he'll be good. Oh man, I wish I could quit stuttering. Ryan Newman. Well, I don't know what's going to happen with him, but in the past, I'm going to talk about Ryan Newman in the past. I was okay with Ryan Newman generally. Like, it's kind of opposite of Kurt Busch, really. Like, I was okay with him whenever he was with Penske. I didn't really have much of a problem with him. But once he left Penske, like, I think I pulled for him maybe 2 or 3 years after he, like, once he jumped over to Stewart-Haas. But the last couple years at Stewart-Haas and then on, I couldn't stand the way he was driving. Like, I don't think he really drove like that while he was in the 12, but he became kind of a bulldozer and a blocker, kind of like the Newman that we know today. He wasn't the Rocket Man, like, near as often as he was a bulldozer or a blocker. Like, he mowed a lot of people down over the course, from his tenure in the 39 car. So I don't really. I wish him well in his recovery, and I hope he gets to come back to racing. But I'm going to be honest. I'm not a big fan of his. He's actually probably one of the drivers that I root against. That I've rooted against for the last several years, but he hasn't really been in contention enough for me to like notice his existence. So unless he's blocking the leaders and causing incidents, but that's just really that's really all I want to say about that. I'll probably be a lot more lenient toward him whenever he comes back. Kind of like how everybody was towards Kyle Busch whenever he got injured in 2015, at least for the first little bit. Because whenever a driver gets hurt or injured, like it kind of brings the whole fandom together. And I really do hope that he recovers well enough to be able to come back. But hey, I'm just going to say this. I'm just glad that he's alive. You know, that was a scary sight on pit road. Like, I wasn't there, but I saw the broadcasting of it and everything, and that wasn't a very good feeling seeing that. But I'm glad he's okay, and I'm glad he's going to come back. Hopefully, I hope he comes back soon. Hopefully, with all this, since everything's on hold right now, hopefully that gives him time to heal up more and he can come back with more of the season. Because as far as I know, they're still going to run all the races. I don't know how they're going to handle all that, but I'm going to talk about Tyler Reddick. This is going to be one of those weird incidences. Like, this has happened like several times. Like, I wasn't a big fan of his when like the last few seasons. Maybe it's just because I like the design of the 8 car, and I kind of liked his 31 car that he ran last year too. But I really like the look of the 8 car, so I kind of want to see it do good, and I want to see RCR kind of back to performing better, kind of like what they were whenever in 2017 and 18. Like, they were pretty good in those years. Not near as good as they were when Harvick was with them and Boyer and Burton, but they were getting they're starting to look better this year. But Tyler Reddick, I wasn't a fan of his, so I can't really say that I'm a big fan of his right now either. I don't know why. I just didn't want to see him win. I just didn't want to see him win. I don't really have a concrete reason. I mean, maybe I don't know. Something about him just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. If he does manage to get a win, I guess I'll be happy for him. But I don't really have much else of an opinion on him. I guess my main driving force behind the reason that I'm not a big fan of his is because he was racing guys he was basically a front runner against guys that I like better than him. Christopher Bell and Cole Custer. I like them way better than I like him. I guess that's my whole driving force behind that. Chase Elliott. This is going to be Chase Elliott is kind of a similar situation to Dale Jr. I don't have a problem with Chase Elliott. I like Chase Elliott. He'll never be a favorite of mine, but I like him. Chase Elliott is a good driver. He wouldn't be a good driver if he didn't have, he has six career Cup wins at this point in time, and probably should have had more wins than he does now. But he has 6 career wins. I know most of them have come on the same type of tracks, but he's definitely improving. And whenever he was a rookie in the Nationwide Series, I don't know what happened in his sophomore Nationwide Series season, but he wasn't near as good in 15 as he was in 14. But in 14, he was really showing his skill. In fact, he kind of won the championship in Brad Keselowski fashion. Like, he had that wrapped up, not near as well as Brad did in 2010, but he had it wrapped up by the second to last race of the season. But I expect great things for Chase Elliott to come, more wins. Maybe sooner rather than later, he'll be closer in to a championship than he's ever been. If the playoff format gets ditched, then perhaps, like if they go back to a less convoluted way of awarding championships, then maybe he'll win one on consistency or something. Who knows? Now, that's not a knock at the playoff format by any means. I love the playoff format, but there are things that I would change if I was in charge of NASCAR. I think the playoff format at this point is kind of run its course. One thing that I do like is the playoff, or not the playoff, the stage racing. Like, if you have that plus the traditional points system, you have a really good chance of having a very entertaining season. Because if things go like they have the last few years, you don't have just one person dominating everything anymore. You have 2 or 3 really good drivers, and they're racking up stage points. Without the threat of losing everything in the playoffs, that would be a really good point system. I mean, I'm sure there's some years where you have this one guy who just takes off with everything. Like, you're never going to avoid that altogether, but I really believe that, and this is off topic, I know. I'm just going off on a little tangent here, but I really like the idea of ditching the playoffs and keeping stage racing, maybe eliminating the cautions too. That's what I would change if I was in charge of NASCAR. But anyway, back to drivers. But yeah, overall, Chase Elliott, great driver, good personality. I have no reason not to like him. I didn't want him to succeed whenever he first came on board because, as a Kasey Kahne fan at the time, there was rumors that he was going to come up and snatch Kasey Kahne's Cup ride, which ultimately didn't happen. But I didn't want him to succeed, at least not as good as he did. But can't deny Chase Elliott's talent, and it ended up working out where Kasey Kahne didn't lose his ride. Of course, kind of wish he would have left Hendrick. But anyway, kind of wish Kasey Kahne would have left Hendrick after 2014 anyway, but I digress. On to the next driver. Number 10, Aric Almirola. I'm going to be really brief with him. Aric Almirola, I've had moments where I liked him, and I've had moments where I didn't like him. And right now I'm kind of back at the point where I don't like him. Like, he's kind of a no thanks driver for me. He's not a least favorite, but I'm like, 2018, he was running really well, and coming off of that first year away from Richard Petty Motorsports, I was like, okay, maybe he's proven to me that I was wrong. I don't think 2018 was a fluke either. I mean, he had a terrible 2019, but I don't think 2018 was a fluke at all. I don't think he'll ever finish fifth in the points again, but he showed that he had the capability of winning races outside of plate tracks, even though he never really pulled it off. But he's a better driver than it showed, but I still don't care for him because he has these moments where he's really whiny. Like in 2010 in the Truck Series, Kyle Busch helped him out quite a bit because he was driving a Toyota for Billy Ballou, and then Kyle Busch had started his Truck Series team, and he was running down there quite a bit. And that one race at Talladega, Kyle Busch just barely, like he was sideways at the finish line and beat Aric Almirola by like a bumper. And Aric Almirola went and complained after the race. I mean, screw you, dude. Kyle Busch helps you out, and then you get mad just because he beats you in a race. I mean, Aric Almirola won like 2 or 3 races that season and finished second in points. It's not like Kyle Busch beating him in that race killed his championship hopes. So, whatever. And then in 2018, toward the end of 2018, he got mad at Logano at Texas and cried like a baby there. So he's always been a bit of a. People complain about Kyle Busch being a crybaby and stuff, which is bullcrap. But Aric Almirola he's had more crybaby moments, in my opinion, that I've seen than a lot of people. So, yeah, general consensus is he's a good driver, but I'm going to pass on Aric Almirola. AA batteries out. Aric Armadillo, what Michael Mertz called him. Number 11, Denny Hamlin. I like Denny Hamlin. He's a winner. He drives for Joe Gibbs. He's got a good person. He's got a decent personality, and he's going to get that championship before he retires. I don't want to believe that he's going to turn out to be another Mark Martin story where him and Mark Martin are definitely tied for it as currently for the the top driver without a championship, but in the Cup Series. But Denny Hamlin, I really haven't really had much of a reason to dislike Denny Hamlin over his career. He's said and done things on the track that I didn't agree with, and there's probably been some times where I'm like, Denny, why are you doing this to me, Denny? But Denny Hamlin, he's a decent driver, a really good driver in my opinion. I don't really see any reason to not like him. I mean, I know he's not really like a super good team player, but seems like he's kind of like Jimmie Johnson. Like he benefits from his teammates, like in plate races and stuff, but doesn't really. Very rarely will he work with his teammates. He'll just jump over to the whoever's doing better and whatnot. But overall consensus, Denny Hamlin. I like Denny Hamlin. I don't think he's like a favorite of mine, at least not a top favorite. But I've always liked Denny. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Ryan Blaney. All right, we're getting it. He's another favorite driver of mine. Liked him for quite a long time. Ever since he showed up, I mean, he's. I think Dave Blaney had talent and potential whenever he was in the Cup Series, but he never could quite capitalize on success, like his son has, Ryan Blaney. But I really like Ryan Blaney. He should have had two. He should have had at least one of those races. He got screwed out of that Las Vegas win. That was his. That should have been Ryan Blaney's win. I don't screw Alex Bowman, screw Joey Logano. That race should have been Ryan Blaney's. But I digress. But yeah, Ryan Blaney. Ever since he won in that Wood Brothers car, which I think both showed the true strength of both the Wood Brothers and Ryan Blaney at the same time. Like Wood Brothers definitely isn't the team that they used to be, like in a good way. Like they're not the mid-pack team that they used to be. They're actually a contender now, and it's a lot of it is thanks in part to their alliance with Penske. So very good deal for Wood Brothers. But now he's in the 12 car now, and I've always liked that 12 car. Like I wasn't like a big fan of Newman. Like he was okay, but like in the 12 car. But I like the 12 all the way back to the days of Jeremy Mayfield. Whenever he drove that car, Jeremy Mayfield's another driver I really like. I like Jeremy Mayfield. I liked that Mobil 1 horse on the car. That was a beautiful paint scheme. I love it. I have several die casts of that. But so whenever I heard Blaney was going to be in the 12, I was like, oh, heck yes. And Blaney's going to be back. He's going to be back with Penske for long term. So that's really good news to hear. I hope Blaney stays in the 12. Hope they don't do something stupid like move him to the 2 or anything. Like if Brad does leave Penske, that's another thing I forgot to say about Brad. It's rumored that he's the front runner to take the 48 car after Jimmie Johnson retires. So I'm on board with that. I think his relationship with Penske is starting to strain, but especially after the crew chief swap, it did not go in Brad's favor at all. Nothing against Jeremy Bolins. I just don't think he's as strong a crew chief as. Of course, they've had that pairing has had their moments though this year. but I don't think it's near as strong as Todd. I don't think he's near as strong as Todd Gordon or Paul Wolfe by any stretch of the imagination. He's a talented crew chief, and he wouldn't be where he was if he wasn't. But I don't know. I think I don't think we've seen the last of Ryan Blaney this year, and I hope Todd Gordon can maybe lead him to a championship. Give all three of those beautiful Penske fonts a championship. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on this guy, Ty Dillon. Not as good as his brother. I'm sorry. He's not as good as his brother. I can't really say that I don't like him. Like, I'm not a fan of him. I don't like I said, I don't think he's as good a driver as Austin is. He ran the same equipment as Austin did, and he got a few wins in the Truck Series, and spent like 3 or 4 years in the Xfinity Series, and only got one win. So I know he's not in the best equipment right now, but I think that's kind of where he deserves to be, because I just don't think that he's that good. He has flashes of brilliance every once in a while, but Clint Bowyer, number 14 driver, Clint Bowyer. He's going to be. It's kind of like Eric Almirola on this one. Bowyer is a driver that I've kind of. There's times where I like him, and then there's times where I don't. And right now, I'm currently against Clint Bowyer. Like, whenever he first, it's gonna sound like I'm a fair weather fan of some of these drivers. I'm not really a fan of him though. Like, there's drivers where I'll get in the mood, like depends on what they do. Like, I'm not like drivers that I'm not a big fan of. I don't. Sometimes I let things get in the way of supporting them or whatever, stupid crap like that. Like, I'm not a fan of like 100 different drivers. I have drivers that I like, drivers that are my favorites, drivers that I dislike, and drivers that I can't stand. And Bowyer, he's kind of been on the border of like and dislike over the years. Most of the years that I've watched Cup racing, he's been on the dislike side. But like whenever he was in the 15 for Michael Waltrip Racing, probably mostly just because I liked his car. I was like, okay, Clint Bowyer. Of course, then I was like, okay, Clint Boyer's a thing. He's cool. I like that. Wasn't a fan of him at Childress. I kind of liked him for a little bit up until Spingate 2013, whenever he was with Michael Waltrip, and then after that, no. And then whenever he went over to the 14 after Stewart retired, I want to see some another driver win in the 14, and he finally did in 2018. So. But after that incident with Eric Jones last year at Kansas, talking crap about him and everything after that race, Eric Jones ain't gonna pull over and let you take the position. Eric Jones was in contention for that win, and you're gonna act like a baby? Yeah, screw you, dude. Talking crap about him. I'm not gonna talk about Premium Motorsports or their drivers. Even though I like Reed Sorensen and everything. Of course, I don't even think Premium Motorsports is a thing anymore. I think they got bought by Rick Ware. So, but so number 17 car. I'll talk about Stenhouse later because he's not in the 17 anymore. Chris Buescher, not a fan. Not a fan of Chris Buescher. I will say this, now that he's in a cup car for Roush, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing him win, but I don't think I'd be like super happy about it either. I don't know. I've just never been a big fan of Chris Buescher. Ever since he knocked Bubba Wallace out of the way for that win at Dover 2015 in the Xfinity Series, he was his freaking teammate, and he took him out. He was going to get more wins later on that year. I know it's racing and everything, but I don't know. I just wasn't happy about it because at the time I was a big Bubba Wallace supporter. He was probably one of my Xfinity guys at that time, and like he always had trouble with sponsorship and everything. So that win would have done wonders for Bubba Wallace's confidence and everything. But anyway, yeah, and then he got that rain-shortened win in the Cup Series, driving for Front Row at Pocono 2016. I was so mad. Like, Kasey Kahne had a really good car that race, and I was like, man, I hope this race goes back green. I want to see if Kasey Kahne can come back and get another win, because Kasey Kahne was decent at Pocono. But it never happened because the rain and the fog and all that stuff wouldn't let up. So they had to give it to him. But my overall opinion of him is he's a good driver. But I don't know. I'm just not a fan. Probably never will be. For the 17 car's sake, because I kind of I liked Stenhouse at first, and then I liked Matt Kenseth really, really well whenever he was in the 17. So as far as the history of the car goes, I hope he does okay, but as far as the driver, I don't care. Don't care about him. All right, here we go. Rowdy Busch, number 18, 2019 and 2015 champion. Ooh, flexing. He was flexing in that Clash race with that trophy on the side of his car. Rowdy Busch, Rowdy Nation. Bristol Sweep two-timer. Kyle Busch, Kentucky's Mr. Inaugural. There's even a rap song about it from Daytona 500, the Kyle Busch Show. Then he also had another song called Rowdy Busch. Kyle Busch. Ever since Kasey Kahne left, I needed a new driver. I tried Erik Jones last year. I still really like Erik Jones. I kind of switched and traded them places, though. After all these years, I have finally conceded to make Kyle Busch my number one driver for this season. And Kyle Busch has always been up there as one of my drivers. Unlike Kurt Busch, I've always liked Kyle Busch. I don't know. It probably at first it probably had more to do with who he drove for. Like at first he was teammates with Jeff Gordon. I was a really big Jeff Gordon fan. Even though early on Kasey Kahne became my favorite driver, I was always a big Jeff Gordon fan. So because Jeff Gordon was kind of my guy before. Whenever I was just a casual race fan, I just like seeing Jeff Gordon win. So Kyle Busch, like the whole Hendrick team, really. I was behind them, except for Vickers, of course. Like because Vickers was in the 25 when I started watching, really getting into it. Kyle Busch, he's only driven 2 cars. Well, no, that's not true. But really, but where his career has counted, he's only driven 2 cars, and they've been really good cars with a lot of history. Driving the 5 and the 18, the former Labonte brothers cars. I liked him. I liked him okay whenever he was with Hendrick. I like whenever he actually did win with Hendrick. I was happy. But I think my support really grew for him whenever he went to Gibbs and he was able to show how good of a driver he really was. And from that point on, I knew he was going to be a championship driver. I knew he was going to win a championship. I just didn't expect it to take as long as it did, but I'm glad it finally happened. He's had a long journey of not only maturity but his driving skill and ability as well. He's always had the ability to win races and contend, but he just never. I think his mentality was lacking. In 2013 was probably his first like really solid year, other than 2008 whenever he won 8 races. So it was really good to see him, like, knock on wood, ever since 2005, he's won at least 1 race. So knock on wood, I'm confident that he'll win a race again this year, at least one. I hope he has another. I hope he has at least a 4. He usually has his average is 4 wins usually. So if he gets 4 wins this year, he will be up to 60 career Cup wins, and that'll do 50 wins, 40 wins, 50 wins. That in itself was amazing. 200 wins across all 3 series, amazing. I don't care. Like, I mean, you can talk crap about him running in the lower series all you want, but he has as much chance of losing those races as he does a cup race. Maybe not near as much, but he still has a chance of losing every truck or Xfinity races he runs. And he's lost them. He's lost them to the regular series drivers before. So that's just a little dose of reality for the haters. Like, those races are hard to win too. Why do you think so many drivers, like a Cup driver, is not guaranteed to win a lower series race? I was going somewhere with this before I went on that tangent, but 200 his wins. I'm talking about his Cup Series stats right now. Like, that's all I really care about for the most part. I like it whenever he wins lower series races. I think his time in the Xfinity Series is probably about to end. I don't think he will. I don't think he'll get those 4 races he needs to win to get to 100. But I think this year and next year will probably be the last 2 races he races Xfinity. He'll probably still race Truck Series for as long as he owns Kyle Busch Motorsports. But as far as as far as Xfinity Series goes, I think he's about done there. I think he will get 100 Xfinity Series wins, but I just kind of feel like his presence in the Xfinity Series is kind of dwindling. Like it's not gonna. I could be wrong, but I don't see him running Xfinity races after 2021. And I do slightly agree with the opinion that maybe he should have been done in Xfinity like a long time ago. Especially after he beat Mark Martin's record. But that win record, that's never going to be beaten by anybody ever again. It's not. I don't think it's unbeatable, like Richard Petty's 200 wins in Cup Series record. But I just don't see anybody having the patience to run all those races like Kyle Busch has run. I just don't see anybody having the patience to do that and run as many races and being able to win that many races. I just don't see that happening. It could happen, but I don't see it happening. Anyway, I'm sorry. I keep going back down to Xfinity. But that's just what I want to say. And I'm going to talk about his championships real quick. 2015 championship, people debate on whether or not he really deserved to be there. But this is the point that I've made from the very beginning, ever since he won the championship in 2015. Ever since it was announced that he was going to have a chance to be in the championship picture after he missed out those races for recovering from those broken leg and foot. NASCAR gave him that waiver. One, because other drivers have had that waiver and had that chance to make it, like after they've missed multiple races. Kyle Busch is probably the only one that's missed that many races and pulled it off. But the next year, Tony Stewart did the same thing. He won a race after missing the first 8 races. Nobody complained about that. Of course, Tony didn't go on to win the championship, but still, I mean, but I think Tony Stewart was granted that waiver in 2014. No, he wasn't. Denny Hamlin was granted that waiver in 2013 whenever he missed 5 races, I believe. Yeah, he was granted that. And Kurt Busch was granted a waiver that year too because he had to miss the first 4 races because of the legal crap that he was going through. It turned out that he was completely innocent, and NASCAR reinstated him. So, yeah, that was a really rough time to be a Busch fan. 4 races without a Busch brother. That sucked. Anyway, that's Kyle Busch coming back and meeting the criteria. Like he not only met the criteria that was placed before him, he went above and beyond. Like he came back and he was like a completely new driver. Like I don't know, I do attribute some of that to Adam Stevens as well. Like I don't think it was all like Kyle Busch was. I don't think it was all motivation on Kyle Busch's part. I believe it was a combination of Kyle Busch's motivation to come back and to not lose his career, and the support of his wife, the birth of his son, and the passion that Adam Stevens puts into building these race cars. And, I believe that Kyle Busch, it was a team. Here's a good argument. I hate using other sports, comparing other sports to NASCAR. because NASCAR is not the same as ball and stick sports. But in this case, I believe this is a fair argument. If a quarterback of a football team is injured and he's been there the whole freaking time, and then he comes back, that quarterback does not make the whole team. The 18 team, they had been on top of it for the whole season, not just when Kyle Busch came back, because there was a handful of drivers that took the number 18 car. Crafton didn't really have a desirable finish, but it was pretty good for his debut, his Cup Series debut, because Crafton was the one that they called to drive the 18 car in the 500. Then David Reagan drove it for 9 races, and then Eric Jones drove it at Kansas before Kyle Busch came back in the All-Star race. And Eric Jones was running really well. I think he had to substitute for Hamlin. Like, Hamlin started the race at Bristol, but Eric Jones had to jump in the car and relieve him for one of those races. May have been like the year before, but Eric Jones was running really well. I guess that was technically his Cup debut in that 18 car, and he was actually running really well until he had a issue on a restart or something and wrecked and hitting the wall. But he ran well for the amount of race that he did run. So it was really good to see that. So yeah, it's not like the 18 team was slouching until Kyle Busch came back. If not just for Kyle Busch, the 18 team deserved to win the championship as well, because whenever Kyle Busch did come back, took him a few weeks, but he was winning races again. So Kyle Busch, you can't say that he didn't deserve to win the championship in 2015, because he did. He fought really hard and won almost, like, he won 4 races within 5 weeks. He won 3 in a row. He won a race at Sonoma, and then Daytona happened. Dale Jr. won that race, and then he won Kentucky, New Hampshire, and Indy, and then stayed in contention all the way to Homestead and won the race, thus winning the championship. So Kyle Busch deserved it. And I will make the argument that he probably deserved to win the 2016 championship. It just didn't happen. He definitely deserved to win the 2017 championship. I think Truex just deserved it a little bit more. His Truex was just a little bit more consistent than he was, and Truex won more races. Kyle Busch didn't win a race in 2017 until August. Of course, that was up until that point. That was just a really bad run for him. But he was running consistently, and he was still very high up in the points. In fact, he looked like he might make the playoffs on points alone, which in the past he's won races and missed the playoffs or missed the chase. So that was first year that it was called the Monster Energy playoffs. So that was but it's still the chase, still the same thing and everything. But Kyle Busch, in my opinion, he deserves it. Kyle Busch probably should be a 3 or 4 time champion by now. Because I wholeheartedly believe that he deserved to win the 2018 championship. He just, for whatever reason, just did not have, they couldn't get that car figured out for Homestead, and Logano ended up winning the championship. So, but I was very happy to see that he was able to pull off the championship in this past November. Very happy to see him get the redemption on that. I just wish they could have done that at Homestead 2018 as well. No disrespect to Logano. Of course, I'm going to talk about him in a minute. I knew the Kyle Busch section of this video would be really long. I've been defending Kyle Busch for years, and I will continue to defend Kyle Busch. Until the end of whatever. But anyway, yeah, that's my opinion on Kyle Busch. Obviously, very high regards for Kyle Busch. I think the haters are stupid most of the time. Kyle Busch is an overly bashed driver, and he does not wreck people. He don't wreck people every freaking race, like people say. He doesn't cry every race, like people say. He doesn't take people out every chance he gets. So, yeah, I don't know. Very unoriginal. Kyle Busch has been around so long now. He's been a polarizing figure for almost his entire career. It's just his haters have run out of original things to say, and now they just keep repeating the same bull crap over and over again, and it's hilarious. 99% of the time nowadays, I don't even give them the satisfaction of arguing with them anymore. Okay, number 19, Martin Truex Jr. And now that I'm finally done babbling about Kyle Busch, champion. Truex. If you would have told me back in 06 and 07, 08-ish, that Truex would, around 10 years later, become a championship caliber driver, I would have, and would win a championship, I would have thought you were crazy. Especially, I've always known Truex had talent. And there's been a lot of races between the span of 07 and 2013 that maybe he should have won. But the fact that he didn't get his second career win until 2013 is astonishing. But, I will say this. Truex has always been a better driver than the results have shown. Part of it has to do with the cars that he's driven. Of course, it's kind of hard to say that, though, because sometimes he's been teammates to drivers who have won multiple races. But I'm really disappointed that he didn't win more races in that 56 car, because I really love the design of that car. That was a really beautiful car. But I'm glad he at least got a win in that car at Sonoma in 2013. It was a good win, good race. And moving to the 78 car, I thought, man, he deserves better. He really does. Especially after he really showed a lot of promise in his last latter years at Michael Waltrip Racing in the 56. But turned out the 78 car was only the beginning. A lot of people expected in 2014 for him to at least run a little bit like what Kurt Busch ran, but that year was just terrible for the 78 team. And I'm just glad that I'm glad he had the crew chief change over the offseason that year, because Cole Pearn probably had the best 5-year run a crew chief has ever had. Like, he was a rookie crew chief the same year Adam Stevens was, and they both put up really similar numbers. I think Cole Pearn had more wins than Adam Stevens as a crew chief. In fact, I'm sure of it, to be honest. But well, no, maybe not. Maybe not. Probably about equal. Maybe if he does have more wins, it's not by much. But Cole Pearn really brought out the potential in Truex, and it really showed. And what was really weird to me was seeing the 78 car winning races, because I was used to seeing that car as a mid-pack team at best for the last several years. I mean, I know they won the Southern 500 with Regan Smith, but that was just a fluke. It really was. It was a fluke. Regan Smith did have talent. He was a good driver and everything, and he was really put in a good position to win that race, and he did, but still, that was a fluke. I believe it was a fluke. Kurt Busch should have won a race with that team, but I believe that Cole Pearn really brought out the best parts of Truex's driving abilities, and it really showed because those two worked really well together. I was really shocked to hear that he suddenly just pulled out, like retired after the 2019 season. But the last 3 years of their tenure together, no. Okay. Yeah, the last 3 years, first in point, winning the championship, finishing second in points 2 years in a row after that. And then in their first year, they finished fourth in points while they were still with Chevy. So, yeah. And it really sucks, because now people are going to be wondering if this really was attributed to Truex, or if it was just a Cole Pearn thing. And I think yes and no. I think Truex has always had the ability to be a winning driver. I don't think he ever had the right situation until he was paired with Cole Pearn and got support from Toyota in 2016. Because that's the year they really took off. It's 2016. They ran consistently in 2015 with Chevy, but but ever since, but whenever they got together, they were producing results immediately. And they were the first driver to win. Like, whenever stage racing was introduced, they were the first. They were the first team to sweep all three stages in a race, and they did that several times as well. and they even did a where did he come from and win several races out of the blue. Like, so they were a championship team for sure, and very very unfortunate that that era has ended. It was a good 5 year run, very solid 5 year run. They should be really proud, and I hope that Truex does continue to run well with James Small as his crew chief. But we'll have to see once the season gets back going. Hopefully this will be. Hopefully this won't be the end of what has been a really good stretch for Truex's career. And if it is, I don't see him staying in the Cup Series much longer due to his age and everything. But let's hope the party isn't over yet for Truex. All right, and number 20, Erik Jones. I have a lot to say about Erik Jones, but I'm going to try to keep it brief because I've used up a lot of time already. And I'm only just now breaking the 20s as far as the number of the drivers. Erik Jones, really good driver. I think that his struggles that he's had over ever since he jumped into in the 20, I think it's been put way too much on him by his critics, because Erik Jones has proven to be a really solid driver, and he did win one of the hardest races to win last season. He won the Southern 500. Yeah, his first win may have been a restrictor plate track, but who gives a crap? It's a win. And he did contend. He has contended for wins before, and I don't know. I think his weakness, opposite of Cole Pearn and the Truex combination, I believe his weakness is with the crew chief. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Chris Gale is a solid crew chief, but he screwed Erik Jones out of wins more times than they won. There's a few races last year where I think that they should have won, but or should have at least had a chance to win in the final laps. But pit strategy and stupid calls by Chris Gale took them out of contention. So it's not. I do believe Erik Jones still has a lot to learn. Like, some drivers just don't like fully take off. They just don't fully take off right away. But they need a few years to season their talents, and this is Erik Jones's fourth year. Yes, fourth year in Cup Series. I'm not saying that I'm not saying this is gonna be the same situation, because it's clearly not. Because Erik Jones has been with Toyota his entire NASCAR career, and but I know Kyle Busch. He won a race here and there before he moved to Gibbs in his fourth year, which is where Jones is currently at. But he really took off whenever it took him a few years to take off. Of course, I attribute that to changing teams and a new change of scenery and stuff. But still, Erik Jones. I believe in Erik Jones as a driver, and he could be a championship caliber driver one day. It just seems like it's harder for these younger drivers to come up because they're younger, Eric Jones was relatively young whenever he came up to Cup. Whenever he started running Cup races, I think he was like 20 or so, 19 or 20 years old, and he ran really impressive in the front of the Furniture Row 77 car. So I really hope Eric Jones gets to stick around. I hope Eric Jones wins more races this year, because I'm ready to pull for him and hopefully see him go to victory lane more than once this year. I really hope that he does not go winless this year, because if he does and doesn't make the playoffs, then that'll probably be the end of it, because we got Christopher Bell waiting in the wings at LFR. And I love this. I would love to see Jones stay with Toyota if that happens, but it's likely that he'll probably go to a different opportunity if that happens. It's hard to say now what silly season's going to do, because of racing is on hold right now. Hopefully, I really hope they get going back in May, like as planned. So I don't know. It's really hard to say right now. Hopefully, this off time lets all the drivers rest up more and everything, and so that way they can come back and be rejuvenated again for whenever they start running races again. But I hope Joe Gibbs Racing gets their crap back together, start running like they did last year, and I hope Eric Jones takes full advantage of the cars that he's got, and hopefully Chris Gale don't screw things up for him again. Anyway, Matt DiBenedetto, number 21. I didn't really have much of an opinion on Matt until last year. He really showed what he was made of last year for sure, in the 95 car, and he has had a couple of good finishes, really good finishes at the start of 2020 in those races that we did get to run. So really happy for him, and happy that he got the opportunity to have a good solid ride. So I don't know, we could see Matt DiBenedetto win a race this year, and I'm fully on board with that possibility, and I hope we do. He's deserved the opportunity that he's gotten. I really think that he's earned it. I don't think the hype behind him is 100% on par, but I think he's a little too hyped up right now. Of course, people are going to get excited whenever a story like this happens. Underdog comes and fights for a win, and more often than not they lose. But that's the case with Matt DiBenedetto, and really, really good props to Paul Menard. I think he's known for a long time that it was about time to step away, and I really think, because it really seems like he was really kind of admiring the run that DiBenedetto had. So I think that Paul just knew that it was time to step away from full-time Cup racing and give a chance to somebody who, let's be honest, will probably perform a lot better than he did. Paul Menard, he was a decent driver. He was a consistent and clean driver for the most part. He just wasn't a winning driver very often. He never really had the speed to win races that much, except for the one race that he actually did. And I really think that was a really classy move, getting Matt DiBenedetto in that car. And so far, it's paying off, and I really hope it continues to pay off for him. Good deal. I wish him nothing but the best. Joey Logano, I'm going to talk about him really briefly. I was a big fan of his whenever he was first starting out for Gibbs. Over the years, I've really become a really big Joe Gibbs Racing fan. That's kind of been like my favorite overall team for the last several years. So whenever a young prospect like Joey Logano came up and was really promising, I was really, really behind him. I was behind him. It's kind of like what Eric Jones is going through, only I don't know. It's kind of hard. It's really easy to compare those two because they're driving the same car at this point. And Logano spent 4 years in the 20 car. Got 2 wins. Logano probably could have and maybe should have won more races in the Cup Series than he did. And I don't think we can blame crew chiefs because he had Greg Zipadelli as his crew chief for his rookie year, and then I can't remember who his crew chief was after that, but once he moved to Penske, that's when his career really took off, similar to Kyle Busch going to Gibbs. That's whenever he only won one race in 2013, but he clearly stepped up. And Michigan has been probably his best track because I think he has more wins at Michigan since moving to Penske than any other track. I think maybe tied with some others. I don't know, but Kansas is another good one for him. But up until I want to say up until the end of 2018, which is really odd because I actually liked Logano probably up until the end of 2018. I don't know why. Like, you would think that me liking him and him winning the championship would be a good thing, but I just don't feel like he. I think he deserved a shot at winning the championship in 2018, even though he kind of raced dirty to get there. But if he doesn't win Martinsville, he doesn't make it. He had one win up till that point, and he goes and wins Martinsville, screws up for 2 races, and then wins Homestead. Part of it's probably biased because I was really wanting Kyle Busch to win, and Truex. He was probably the least deserving of the 3, or of the 4 that made the championship in 2018, but he won the race that mattered. So, but I don't know. In 2019, Logano just kind of put a bad taste, I think he did something last year. I just don't remember because I just kind of quit paying attention to Logano. I just don't care for him that much anymore. I think what really started this was his incident with Kyle Busch at 2017 at Las Vegas, and then I don't know the way he's raced since then. I know we had some incidents in 2019 that really ticked me off that he was involved in, and he was clearly the instigator. Because whenever he first started, everybody, including me, was saying that he. I will say this about Logano. Everybody wanted him to grow a backbone and quit getting, and so he'd getting pushed around by the other drivers. Whenever he finally did, that's when everybody started hating him. I just didn't really jump on that. I don't hate Joey Logano. I don't hate anybody because hating is a sin. And I don't dislike. I just kind of mildly dislike Logano now. Like, I wouldn't even say he's the least favorite driver of mine. He's just kind of become a no thanks driver now. Like, of the three Penske drivers, in order from like to dislike, it probably goes Blaney, Keselowski, and then Logano. I just don't care for Logano anymore. I'm just over Joey Logano now. I think that's pretty much how I can sum that up. I'm just over Joey Logano. I'm glad he got a championship because that I do believe that was inevitable. Joey Logano, from the start, I knew he had the potential to be a champion. I just didn't expect it to happen when it did. But that's how it goes sometimes. But yeah, I'm kind of over Joey Logano now. I just don't really have much reason to pull for him anymore. Yeah, I guess the only time I pull for him is if he's racing against somebody that I just don't like. I just flat out don't like him. And if Logano's in contention, I'll be like, beat him, Logano, just beat him. I don't want to see the other guy win. All right. Number 24, William Byron. I'm going to keep this brief. I like William Byron. I just like William Byron. I mean, he's a decent driver. He's a good driver. And I'm glad he's got Chad Knaus as his crew chief now. And I kind of expected him to win a race last year, but I am expecting at least one win from him this year. He was really impressive in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. I think the only reason why he won the Xfinity Series championship was in part due to the playoff format. I just don't. Whenever they first announced the playoff format for the lower series, I was on board with it, but now I don't think it fits anymore. Like I think I'm going to say like what I said with the Cup Series. I think the playoff format needs to go. Keep the stage racing. Of course, he lost the Truck Series championship because he should have won. I believe he should have won the 2016 Truck Series championship, but he lost out due to a blown engine. He was the Martin Truex of that year because Truex lost his championship. He lost his ability to compete for the championship because of a blown engine as well. It eliminated him from contention. So he would Truex and Byron were the two guys that really got screwed over by the playoff system last year. So yeah, playoff system has its pros and cons. I still like it for the most part, but I think it's outdated now. I think it needs to go, even though every driver that's won the Cup Series playoffs championship has deserved it in some form or another. So yeah, I don't really have much to say about Corey LaJoie up until probably he jumped into the 32 car. Even then, I couldn't stand LaJoie. Part of it has to do with a big reason I really not a big fan of Corey LaJoie is because I'm still really salty about how he screwed Brett Moffitt out of the K&N Series championship in 2012. He wrecked him, and then he wrecked him for a win. That really, I think Moffitt would have had a much better chance of winning the championship had that not happened. So yeah, I still look back on that, and I'm like, screw you, Corey LaJoie. Now that he's made it to the Cup Series and he's part of mainstream now, he's kind of shown his personality, and he does have a decent personality and everything. So he's a little bit easier for me to stomach now, for sure. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Corey LaJoie. I don't dislike him as much as I used to, and I don't know. He might be growing on me. Don't have much of an opinion on Michael McDowell. I think he's wasting his time in the Cup Series. I think he'd do much better as an Xfinity Series driver. Probably he may have won championships if he was in a top tier ride. He came really close. I think he's only got one win. He won for RCR at a road course race, which has been his bread and butter. But he's never in contention for the road course races in the Cup Series, so that's why I think he's wasting his time. The only other time he's really that competitive is in the plate races. So yeah, Michael McDowell, nice guy, decent driver. I really don't think Cup racing is for him. Of course, it doesn't really help that he's in Front Row Motorsports equipment. Ryan Preece, don't have much of an opinion on him. I think he's a good driver. I think he probably jumped the gun on jumping up to Cup. Of course, he's JTG Racing, not the best Cup team either, but he's shown decent. He's had decent runs before, so we will see. Yeah, this is going to start getting easier now. Ryan Preece probably should have stayed in the Xfinity Series. Probably jumped to a. I don't think he would have stayed with Gibbs. I think he probably would have moved to. I think he probably would have done good if he would have tried to take sponsorship. Sorry, excuse me. He would have tried to find some sponsorship and go to Penske or Childress or something and race for one of those teams in the Xfinity Series, and then try to move to Cup if he was really that good. He has 2 wins in Xfinity with Joe Gibbs, so he's obviously a good driver. Excuse me. And he's a modified series champion, so definitely some talent there. John Hunter Nemechek. He's a good driver. Not a big fan of him, especially being kind of a Cole Custer supporter, and that that race that he kind of had to bully into winning at Canadian Tire Raceway Park. I didn't like the way he won that race. So that's pretty much all I have to say about him. He probably should stay in the Truck Series, to be honest. He's had some decent, decent for his standards and for Front Row Motorsports standards since he started in Front Row. He's had some decent runs, but I don't know. I think he's moving up too fast. He did get a win in the Xfinity Series, but it was driving for Ganassi. And back then, anybody who drove that 42 Ganassi car was pretty much a lock to win. So, yeah. I think. Of course, I'm kind of glad he's not in the Truck Series anymore because I never liked seeing him win truck races anyway. So, I don't know. Maybe he's where he belongs. Hopefully, I won't have to see him win races anytime soon. It sounds horrible for me to say, but I don't know. I'm just don't really care for him. Don't really care for him at all. Cole Custer wasn't a huge fan of putting Suarez in the 41 to begin with. So I'm glad Cole Custer's in it. Nothing against Suarez, but I don't know. I just don't have that much I didn't have much confidence in him, especially after he failed with JGR. Suarez, I think he's another driver that's just rushed up to cut too soon. Cole Custer did it right. I think Cole Custer it's going to take him a while for sure to get to the level where he should be. So I don't expect much from him in the 41. But I'm glad that he's in the 41 now, and hopefully he'll develop into a contender, similar to the way that he did whenever he moved to the Xfinity Series from the Truck Series. So, hopefully, hoping for good things for him. Kyle Larson, what's there to say about Kyle Larson? What else is there to say other than he's a great driver? I got to see him win live at the Chili Bowl this year, and that was really great. I have to say I was probably pulling more for Christopher Bell because I wanted to see him go 4 in a row. But if anybody was to beat Christopher Bell, I was hoping it was Larson because he has deserved to win that race for so long. I think the hate that he gets over his comments about dirt racing, over loving dirt racing more than NASCAR, I think that's stupid because he does want to win Cup races, obviously, or he wouldn't be there. He wouldn't be there if he didn't care at all about NASCAR. He just loves his dirt racing roots more, and you can't blame him. And probably a big driving force behind running Cup races is that it helps fund his team in sprint cars. But I mean, if he didn't want to win, and if he didn't want to race, he wouldn't be here. Really, I really hope that I think Bowyer is probably going to be gone at the end of this year. There was a report that came out and said that So if they do, I hope Stewart-Haas is finally able to secure Kyle Larson for that 14 car. A lot of people really want to see that. Of course, there's a lot of people who are delusional and think that he's going to go to the 48 after Jimmy retires. Don't see it happening. But yeah, I hope that win at Dover was a sign of good things to come for Larson. I hope he starts winning more races in the Cup Series now. But if he's not happy, if he decides that he's not happy running NASCAR anymore, I will still support him if he decides to just go back to dirt. But it's kind of funny because Christopher Bell, it kind of seemed like it. I don't want to say he's the complete opposite of Larson, but Bell seems way more invested in his NASCAR career than Larson does. He even dropped out of the sprint car event overseas just to I guess just to be able to focus on his Cup car. So Christopher Bell definitely. I should probably save the Christopher Bell stuff for whenever I get to him, but I guess I could go ahead and talk about him now. That's a good segue. Talk about Kyle Larson. Christopher Bell is going to come up. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and talk about Christopher Bell here in just a minute as soon as I put my closing statements on Larson. I don't know. I think I've actually said all I'm going to say about Larson. I hope Larson goes to the 14, and I hope he keeps winning races. I like Kyle Larson, and that's that. Christopher Bell. Before I move on to the next driver, Christopher Bell was a really big. He was my driver. Whenever he was in the KBM 4 truck, he was my driver in the trucks. Kind of tied with Matt Crafton because I'm a Matt Crafton fan. It's kind of a good. It's a good thing that Moffitt didn't really show up until 18. Otherwise, I would have had a 3-way tie for my favorite driver in the Truck Series. But anyway, and then whenever he went to the 20 car in the Xfinity Series, and then almost immediately started winning races, I was very pleased, very happy to see that. And this ain't the main reason why I like Christopher Bell, but it does hold some concrete merit to it. I am from Oklahoma. Not around the same area of Oklahoma as Christopher Bell is. Christopher Bell is from Norman, Sooner country, Oklahoma Sooners. And as far as I can tell, he is a Sooners fan. So Boomer Sooner. And I love that for the first part of his rookie season in Xfinity Series, his rain car was red and white, crimson and cream. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's just what I noticed. Then they started throwing black on the car, which I think made it look better. So I'm not going to be salty about that at all. But Christopher Bell, I've got a lot of hope behind him. If he does end up taking Erik Jones's spot in the 20, I will be okay with that. I'll be a little disappointed because I really want to see Erik Jones stick around too. I want them to be teammates in the Cup Series at some point, which means one of the big 3 drivers at Gibbs is going to have to retire, which in my opinion would most likely be Truex. Seeing Christopher Bell in the number 19 Bass Pro Shops car, that would be pretty epic. Nothing against Truex. If Truex can stick around, I hope he does. But if not, I hope Christopher Bell makes that jump to that 19 car. Either that or sticks around in the 95 and helps develop that team to be even better than what they were when DiBenedetto was driving it. So that's my piece on Christopher Bell. I have I have personal reasons for pulling for Christopher Bell, but generally as a driver, I like him. Definitely shows something where he basically, I think I don't know if it was his first ever start, but whenever he won that 2015 Eldora truck race, that was one of his first starts, and that's a really good sign. That I believe wholeheartedly that's why he came back. Because he came back as a rookie in 2016 in the Truck Series. So, Christopher Bell, you're awesome. Next driver, number 43, Bubba Wallace. I still like Bubba Wallace a little bit, but I do see why people are starting to get annoyed with him, because while he is a very passionate driver, and I do believe he's a very talented driver, I don't think he's Cup Series material, and I don't know how long he's going to last in the Cup Series. I don't know how much longer Richard Petty Motorsports is going to be able to hold on either. I think Richard Petty Motorsports is eventually going to get absorbed by a team that probably has like 2 or 3 cars currently, and it'll probably either replace one of those cars, or I don't know. That's just my speculative snippet on the future of Richard Petty Motorsports, but I don't know. I don't think Bubba Wallace is a Cup driver. I mean, he is, but he's not. I don't think he's a Cup Series level driver. He definitely has had his moments. He's definitely better than what his results have shown, but I think he couldn't cut it in the Xfinity Series, and he went back for a race in 2017 in a truck that I had no idea even existed. It was a number 99 Chevy or something like that, and he won the race. So he's definitely still got it as a Truck Series driver, but I don't know. I just think Bubba Wallace is more of a Truck Series driver than he is a Cup driver. He probably could still be a decent Xfinity Series driver if he was in the right position and not having to worry about sponsorship. That's just my opinion. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Liked him as the driver of the number 6. Liked him. I liked him okay as the driver of the number 17 in Cup. Definitely has talent. Just not as good a Cup driver as we would have hoped. Of course, in all fairness, he did join the Cup Series whenever Roush was basically they were at the very start of their downhill spiral. So this year he's showing a promising start in this new environment, this new work environment that he's got. So we'll see what happens. Maybe he'll turn out to be the best driver that JTG's ever had. He's already proven to be probably the strongest driver they've ever had, aside from AJ Allmendinger, who got them their first win in 2014. But I do believe Stenhouse will amount to something. eventually if the cards play out right for him. But so far, things just haven't really turned out good for him, and he hasn't really been in the best position. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Stenhouse, he's always been an okay driver. So Jimmie Johnson, putting it briefly, first few years, I didn't really start following NASCAR like super closely until around his first championship. But he was the protege of Jeff Gordon, who I was a big time fan of. So I was able to put support. I was able to put my support behind Jimmie Johnson until around 2009. After his third championship, I was like, all right, Jimmie Johnson, because I didn't want to see Carl Edwards win championship. Would have much rather seen Jeff Gordon win the championship in 2007, but I was able to accept it. And then couldn't stand Carl Edwards back then, so 2008 it was easy for me to pull for him. But after that, Mark Martin being as close to the championship as he was, he wasn't as close as he had been like in his years driving the 6 car, but if certain things hadn't happened, and if maybe he would have won more races in the playoff in the chase that year, I don't know. But kind of after that, I kind of got tired of Jimmie Johnson. Jimmie Johnson won the only Cup race that I've ever been to. It was the 2013 Fall Texas race. So there's that. I got to see him win in person, which at the time I was really annoyed by because after 2008, I never really was a Jimmie Johnson fan again. But I can respect all his accomplishments and what he's done. And he has nothing left to prove. Sure, there's a few tracks that he hasn't won at and probably may never win at because he's been in decline in performance for the last few years. But oh man, this is going to get really easy after this. But Jimmie Johnson, mad respect for what he's been able to accomplish in his career, and he has nothing left to prove, and he's going to go out as a 7-time champion. I don't know. There's still a chance he could win an 8th championship, but I doubt it. Unless things really turn around for him this year. I can just skip over these guys. I guess I could say a quick bit about Reed Sorenson. Reed Sorenson definitely deserves better than he's had in his career. Just really sucks that he got screwed over by Steve Turner in 2011, and his career has never recovered. He's never been in a good enough ride in any series after 2011, and that really sucks. I don't know what he did to deserve this, but as far as I can tell, he did nothing wrong. Alex Bowman, yeah. No. Absolutely not. Not a fan. And I think the big reason behind that is, this is going to sound kind of petty and stupid, but Alex Bowman just annoys the crap out of me. I can't stand him. I can't stand seeing him in the race. I can't stand him at all. He's annoying. He annoys the crap out of me. Whenever he first showed up racing, he's sharing Dale Jr.'s car with Jeff Gordon. whenever Junior had to be out due to a concussion. I could not stand how he came out of the box with good cars, contending for, like, he even contended for a race win on multiple occasions, while Rick Hendrick was letting Kasey Kahne struggle. Like, nothing was being done to help Kasey Kahne. Like, you can say what you want, but that just further cements my anger and disdain for Hendrick Motorsports, and how Kasey Kahne how his career was handled. I know Kate. Anyway, I'll get to Kasey Kahne here in a little bit, but Alex, just see Alex Bowman doing that, and while my driver was struggling driving the same equipment, it just really ticked me off. And then, I don't know, Alex Bowman, he just annoys the crap out of me. He's just one of those drivers. Like, he's kind of like he's not the first driver that's had this effect on me either. David Rudiman was one. David Ragan, I like David Ragan for a little bit, but he kind of really started annoying the crap out of me too. Even Trevor Bayne, after it became very apparent that Trevor Bayne was going to be a one-hit wonder, he never ran. He may have had maybe a few solid runs whenever he finally went full-time Cup racing in the 6, but he just never was. He just became really annoying just because he crashed a lot and sometimes wrecking people out of contention who were legitimate contenders. So, yeah, Alex Bowman, I can't deny that he's a solid driver. He's really starting to put the Hendrick power, but I have personal reasons and personal annoyances about him that I can't stand him. And that's my problem. That's not anybody else's problem. That's just my problem. It's not the best reasons, but okay. I'm gonna go over drivers that are touch over Daniel Suarez real quick. Topic of Daniel Suarez real quick. Even though I kind of briefly did earlier, I'm just going to repeat myself. Suarez, decent driver, definitely one of those drivers who benefited from the playoff system and the misfortunes of others and won a championship. I'm not saying he didn't earn it, because he won. He did win the race. He did win Homestead. He didn't win 2 races before that. So he definitely deserved to be there, but I think, like, there were drivers who deserved it more. And he kind of got forced up the Cup too early because Edwards departed from the Cup Series. And Eris obviously wanted their guy, who was Daniel Suarez, to drive in the Cup Series. Being reliant on Eris, I think, has killed Suarez's career. And because he probably could have had a really good, decent ride lined up for him in the Xfinity Series this year, but his sponsors are so stubborn. They want him to stay in the Cup Series. I mean, I get it. I get the marketability and everything, but the performance just ain't going to be there because he's with the 96 Gaunt Brothers car now. That's not going to be. He's not going to have a good season in that car. But anyway, after that, enough about that. We'll talk about some drivers that's really meant a lot this is the driver that I probably have more diecast of than anybody. Kasey Kahne. He's probably my favorite driver of all time. It's probably one of my favorite cars of his of all time, other than the Great Clips Cup car and the Red Bull car. But I don't know. Kasey Kahne, he was just a driver that he was a proven winner, and I really liked his personality. And at some certain points of his career, he was considered an underdog, and he'd win races unexpectedly, and it was a wonderful thing to see. I just wish throughout his career he would have been able to capitalize on those chances that he had to win races and win more, but some bull crap happens, and he either gets wrecked out by somebody else, or his pit crew screws him over, or stupid crap like that happens. He just had bad luck and blowing a motor or something like that. I mean, Kasey Kahne definitely had a career full of ups and downs. Sadly, I feel like more than half of it was downs, but he proved that he was a good driver and definitely could have been a championship contender had the right situation fallen into his lap. And I thought that was going to be the case when he went to the 5 at Hendrick, but nobody's going to succeed at Hendrick Motorsports unless they're a top popular driver. Like even Dale Jr., like it took him a long time whenever he went to Hendrick, but he eventually started winning races and even became a championship contender in 2014. So Kasey just never had that right opportunity. He probably could have in 06 in his statistically best season other than 2012. 2006 and 2012 are probably the best 2 seasons of his career. 2013 probably a close third. But I'm just glad that he was able to get one more win, and at a track that I felt like he really should have won at. He had a few good opportunities to win at Indianapolis before, and it just didn't happen for him. And he finally got it. And there's a couple of other tracks I really wanted to see him win a plate race in the Cup Series. That just never happened. But yeah, Kasey Kahne, probably my favorite driver of all time, just because I was so invested in his career, and just really sucks that it ended the way that it did. I know he had health issues and stuff that sidelined him, and he was kind of on the decline anyway. I don't know. You can make the argument that maybe the health issues and lack of performance due to mediocre Hendrick cars, like getting the crap equipment. That's my opinion. You can disagree with me all you want about that, but I stand by my decision to make Kasey Kahne my driver for all those years, and really sucked to see him had to retire. But I did eventually get to meet him at the Chili Bowl last year in 2019. It's the day after my birthday, and I got my Bristol, my Kasey Kahne 2013 Bristol Win car, and my 64 scale Mopar that looked just like this one, but it was 64 scale. I got that signed, and a Mopar Sprint car 64 scale diecast signed by Kasey Kahne at the Chili Bowl last year, which was probably one of the best moments of my life. I'm not going to lie. one of them. There's other things more important than racing. That's probably been the best moments of my life, but that was definitely up there for sure. Jeff Gordon, I mentioned him several times. He had a big impact on my experience with NASCAR, and I love seeing Jeff Gordon win races. Never got tired of it. 93 wins as a Cup driver. Very happy to be able to say that I was supporting Jeff Gordon. Not much else to say about Jeff Gordon. He had some of the best looking cars on the track, and I loved it whenever he won in the Pepsi car. He only ran the Pepsi car for every so often, but he did get some wins in that car. So very happy. Happy to see Jeff Gordon win out in his retirement year with a win. Tony Stewart wasn't like a huge fan of his when I first started, but he definitely grew on me, and I loved seeing Tony Stewart win races too. He's probably the big reason why I am a fan of, such a big fan of Joe Gibbs Racing. Him and Kyle Busch, definitely a big part of why Joe Gibbs Racing is so sentimental to me. And I'm glad Tony Stewart also got to win a race before he retired, like in his retirement year. So maybe, I know Dale Jr. wasn't so lucky, but maybe Jimmy Johnson will be lucky enough to get a win before he retires. Mark Martin, a lot of respect for Mark Martin, and guys like Jeff Burton, Terry, and Bobby Labonte. I'm going to kind of put all those guys in the same little, all pioneers of, well, not pioneers, but all respectable veteran drivers of the sport that I respected a lot. Especially Mark Martin, probably the best driver, maybe alongside Denny Hamlin, who never won a Cup championship. Mark Martin he's definitely a legend of the sport, and as well as Jeff Burton, Bobby Labonte, Terry Labonte, all those guys. Dale Jarrett, can't forget him. Dale Jarrett was also a great driver. All those guys, they were kind of the older drivers of the field, and they showed a lot of respect, and I respected them a lot. Matt Kenseth, I respect the crap out of Matt Kenseth, even though later in his career he did kind of have a few moments where he kind of lost control of himself. But Matt Kenseth, at first I didn't like him just because, for the simple fact that I couldn't stand Jack Roush racing back in my earlier days, and I still don't like Jack Roush to this day. But it would be kind of neat to see Roush come back to at least similar to the form that they used to be in. I don't think that'll ever happen. I think Roush's best days are behind them, but Matt Kenseth, definitely a driver that I grew to respect. I think I first started pulling for him. Like, I still had a massive anti-Roush bias in 2008 and 2009 and stuff like that. First time I remember pulling for Kenseth was in the Dover. It was like the second chase race at Dover, and Biffle, Kenseth, and Edwards. I knew Mark Martin Mark Martin was in contention too, but he wasn't going to catch up to him. And Matt Kenseth, Biffle, and Edwards were 1, 2, 3 for the finish. And I was really of the three, Kenseth was the one that I liked the best. So I was like, go Kenseth, go Kenseth. But unfortunately, Biffle won. But later on, I did start to warm up to Matt Kenseth, and around 2010, around 2010 is whenever I started to pull for Kenseth, and he eventually became one of my favorite drivers, just because I finally looked into him and found out that he was the kind of driver that I would like to root for. So I kind of became a kind of Matt Kenseth fan, and I kind of had him up in my top 5 drivers after about around 2011, 2012. And he kind of stayed up there for a long time. And Matt Kenseth is a really good driver. Really underrated for sure. Really wish he would have won that 2013 championship, but that would have been cool, especially after he broke out with so many wins that year. But Jimmie Johnson just had to win his 6th championship that year. Yeah. Carl Edwards, I'm going to jump over to him. I've only got a few more drivers to talk about. Carl Edwards is a driver who I did not care for. I did not like him. He was probably my least favorite driver for a while. I think he was my least favorite driver before Harvick became my least favorite driver. And I never really did care for him. Once he moved to Joe Gibbs Racing, because I had been wanting Joe Gibbs Racing to become a 4-car team for a long time. And in 2015, it finally happened. So those first 2 years, he was the driver of that 9-car, 2015 and 16. He was still probably he was my least favorite, definitely, of the Gibbs guys, just by default. But I found it easier to pull for him to win races now because he wasn't with Roush. And him winning races for Gibbs was inevitable. And whenever he did, more times than not, I was okay with it. So Carl Edwards was definitely a sportsmanship showing driver, even though he did things. There was a few incidents that he was involved in that I was not on his side at all. I was really probably 2008 was probably the peak Carl Edwards dislike for me. And whenever he spun Kyle Busch out after winning that race at Bristol, and Kyle Busch showed his displeasure about how he raced him. I know a lot of people were cheering for Carl that day, but that was probably one of my least favorite Carl Edwards memories ever. And then obviously, of course, the stuff with Brad, but that's pretty much all I have to say about Carl. I respect his. He was definitely a nice and one of the nicer guys in the garage for sure. And I don't like the way he left the sport, but because I think he could have given his fans more notice, but he may not have. I don't know. Sometimes people just make decisions like that on a whim, and then they go with it. So, Carl Edwards, I still don't think he's worthy to be inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame yet. He's a nominee this year, but I don't know. They may be running out of people to put up there. So, Carl Edwards not quite Hall of Fame, at least not yet. There's definitely people who deserve to be in there more than he does, but Carl Edwards, decent driver. a very good driver. Just not legendary, just based on the amount of seasons he went winless or just won one race or something and stuff like that. But he did over his I think he ran 12 years, 12, 13 years in the Cup Series. Over that span of time, he definitely made a name for himself and won a lot of races. So he was definitely a respected member of the Cup Series garage and a respected driver among the fans. So Carl Edwards does deserve all the recognition that he gets, that's for sure. Okay, the last three drivers I have to talk about are Dale Sr., Dale Jr., and Richard Petty. Don't really have much to say about them. I guess I'll start with Dale Jr. because he's probably the one of those three that I have the most to say. I have had zero reason to dislike Dale Jr. Like, Dale Jr. has never, ever, ever given me a reason to dislike him. But he was I couldn't join Junior Nation. His fans were probably his fan base is probably the bane of my existence. Well, no, I don't want to say that. There's definitely some drivers that have worse fans than Dale Jr., Junior Nation, at least in my experience. But Dale Jr. does have probably one of the most annoying fan bases. And I say that while acknowledging that I have had some really good experiences with Junior Nation too. Some of the best NASCAR fans that I was on Facebook with were Dale Jr. fans. Most of the NASCAR Weekly podcast guys were Dale Jr. fans, like Iceberg, Danny B. Talks, and I believe Black Flags Matter, Darian Gilliam was a Dale Jr. fan too. So, and I like all three of those guys. So most of I don't know. Most of it was just the hype and the over. I don't know. If Kyle Busch is one of the most overly bashed drivers, I think Dale Jr. is just a little bit most overly loved, just because of his last name and because of Earnhardt. You know, the Earnhardt name, which is really weird because for most of Senior's career, yeah, I'm going into Senior now. Senior was probably the most one of the most disliked drivers. Of course, I don't want to be one of those people to make this comparison because I don't agree with it. But in a way, he was kind of like the Kyle Busch of today, or like he was kind of like Kyle Busch today. Kyle Busch, for like every hater that Kyle Busch has like, for every hater, there's like 2 or 3 fans. So I definitely believe that more people like Kyle Busch than hates him, because I mean, Kyle Busch was really close to being the most popular driver this year, this past season, according to the voting and everything. And I think Dale Sr. had a similar fan reaction. He was a polarizing figure in the sport too, just like Jeff Gordon. I'm not saying that Kyle Busch is like on par with talent. I mean, Kyle Busch is a very, 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 very talented race car driver, but probably not on the same like level. It's kind of hard to say because different eras and everything. Kyle Busch is in a different era than Jeff Gordon at the start of his career, and then Dale Sr. at the prime of his were. But Dale Jr. or Dale Sr. NASCAR legend, probably one of the greatest drivers of all time. I think him, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, and Richard Petty and David Pearson are probably the top 5 greatest drivers of all time. Richard Petty, briefly just talk about Richard Petty real quick. I respect his legacy, and I respect his everything that he accomplished in his career as a driver. Wish his tenure as an owner for other drivers driving his cars would have went much, much better than they did. I would have loved to see the 43 continue to win races regularly, just like Petty did. I know Petty didn't win all his races in the 43, but he was fairly stout. So that's pretty much all I want to say about that. I mean, Richard Petty, respect for the legend, there's things that each and every person that I've talked about today has done or said that I didn't agree with, and then those that I said that I liked, obviously I agree with them way more often than anything. Like I know I said I'll defend Kyle Busch for everything that he said, or until I'm probably to be a Kyle Busch fan until either I stop watching racing or whatever happens. But there has been things that he's done and said that I did not agree with, but it's definitely not. And stop bringing up that stupid Hornaday incident. My goodness, that was like 9 years ago now, almost. And in my opinion, I'm not going to get into that. I need to end this video. I've been talking for 2.5 hours. My throat's dry. I'm ready to shut up now. But that's pretty much my piece. Got a lot of respect for NASCAR and the drivers that it's had over the years. There's a lot of drivers I didn't talk about because they weren't relevant to me. Some of them that I didn't talk about may have been relevant at the time to me, but I'm not talking about them anymore. And I just want to say that I'm glad that I became a NASCAR fan, and that's pretty much all I have to say. I've been wanting to make this video for a very long time. I even attempted it a few times, but I kept getting interrupted. But I finally got it done. I could finally get it off my mind. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.